Welcome to My Home HQ podcast with Ray Fletcher. Leading the way in buying and selling homes, knowing the current housing market, updating your home without an extensive remodel, or how to stage your home for the perfect sale and more. Portland, Oregon real estate agent Ray Fletcher will bring his 20-plus years experience of real estate, home ownership, and selling homes to you in his bi-monthly podcast. This podcast will be your home headquarters for strategies to achieve success in your real estate investments. Now your host of the podcast, Terry Fletcher.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the My Home HQ podcast with Ray Fletcher. Our resident home and real estate expert, Portland, Oregon area realtor Ray Fletcher is here today to chat with me about DIY projects versus hiring a contractor. I'm your host, Terry Fletcher. Now, first, if you are considering remodeling your home, this can be a big and stressful undertaking. Fortunately, hiring a contractor who's well-versed in the process may help alleviate some of that stress, but it may be out of your budget, so we want to really look at the contrast between should you do it by yourself or should you do it on your own, or should you hire that contractor and what to look for. So, Ray, how are you doing this month?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I'm happy that we're in 2023. I was ready to move past 2022 and hopefully good things are coming.
Yep, I agree.
So before we get started, I wanted to set the stage a little bit. I know you had a recent home project that you had to deal with. Your niece, my daughter, Summer, her and her husband wanted to put on new doors on their master shower, primary shower.
Yep.
So they just, without thinking about it and what was needed, they went and bought these doors. Well, mother did, me,
Yep.
from Amazon, which were a little over $500. And then they actually, on their own, they bought some tile from Home Depot and then tried to do it as a DIY project, since Christian is Summer's husband, my son-in-law, is a great handyman for a lot of things. But it didn't work because were not aware that their shower is one of those inserts.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So they can't put doors on it. And so Summer went and got quotes to see what it would take. And she almost fell off her chair. It was between $9,000 and $11,000 to put in doors, even with them having the material. She thought maybe $2,000.
Right.
So they're gonna wait, needless to say, but now they've got $1,500 worth of materials just sitting in their garage. So when we start talking about this, and the project you just had to deal with all the rains and stuff that happened, are you seeing this kind of project started with people that are new homeowners or even existing without knowing if it can be done DIY first?
Yes. The problem that one of the main things we see is when people start watching the home shows, redo your kitchen on a budget for $2,500 or your bathroom, or like Summer's looking at her doors, and then you get on Amazon, you're like, oh, no problem, $500, some tile, $100, some materials, and then Christian can do it. And they're in it for less than $1,000. And that's typically what happens. Now, once the bigger issue is who measured it? First of all, let's start from the basics. Did Christian measure it, gave you the measurements, and then you just went on Amazon and saw a door and you're like, perfect? Or did Summer measure it? Did you see photos of what they're trying to put doors on? And did you do all the research before you ordered it? Or did they just say, these are the doors we want? If you want to give us a gift, this would be great. And so who did the legwork to get to that point where the doors even showed up?
So if we're playing Let's Make a Deal, it'll be door number 3.
Exactly. Right. And so with all that said, the doors, from what it sounds like, I have not talked to your daughter about this one. However, if I would have, I would have been like, really? You could put shower doors on that? Are you sure?
Right.
Because and then on the flip side, $9,000 is ridiculous. They should be able to pull the whole shower out, get a full tile shower with doors for $3,000. So just keep that in mind. And that's having somebody else do it. And if Christian was handyman enough to do the demo himself, new construction, which is what she has, that demo would be a piece of cake. And since it's a 1-piece or maybe even a 2-piece shower, all they're really doing is cutting the edges, the grout out, and the sealant, plumbing, of course, popping it out. And even if they had to cut it out, again, so there is some DIY stuff that can be done, which we'll discuss here in a minute. But a lot of contractors do walk in on bad DIY jobs that never got finished.
Yeah. So that's where they kind of make their money, I would think.
Well, they definitely get to charge a lot more because they have to fix the mistake first and then do the job.
Yeah, he made it one
So,
hole in one side, but what was
yeah,
interesting is and then he stopped. He's like, "Okay, this
yeah,
isn't working." But she got the first one that came in at 9,500, the first bid, and then the second proposal came in more. And she's just
yeah.
like, I go, "Right now you really can't afford that." She goes, "No." And Christian's like, "You know what? I'm okay with the shower curtain right now. We're good."
Right.
So,
Yeah, for sure.
now what happened to you recently? I know in California we've had ridiculous rain over the last month or so. I know you had some flooding. What happened?
Yeah. So we had a major ice storm here. And then so, and this is, I've, again, 20 plus years in the business, never heard of this. They have what's called an ice dam, and it happens on your roof. So we have an office. So when you're looking at the front of our home, we have a pitch on one side above an office, like a vaulted ceiling. And then it goes to a flat wall. And that flat wall and that pitch come together. And then there's a gutter above it. And now I never knew this. I know gutters just run on the roof. And I've always thought that was weird because you're going to get dirt and debris and it attracts your roof. The reason I was told they do that is because if you put some sort of drainage right there, like a tube or a pipe, a gutter pipe, you could hear noise and you'll get it through your whole house. It'll start ticking or something if the water's off a little bit. So they just run it on the roof and it goes in your gutter. So we got this ice storm. It piled up about probably 2 feet, a foot and a half up that wall. No big deal. It's happened before. And then as soon as the storm was over, the house is warm. It starts melting below, but the water has nowhere to go because it's a dam. And so it came straight
Wow.
up the flashing, and then straight down. And then, I mean, literally, we had a water running in the house, and we were dumping 5 gallon. Well, actually, it's those Costco yellow and black bins. Those, like, every 30 minutes, we're
Oh my
dumping those out.
gosh.
Well, I'm trying to figure out why is the water coming in. Called the roofer. And on a side note, this is so called the roofer, and then he basically said, "Well, if once you get that off of there, I promise you it'll stop." And I put a blanket on the roof because you shouldn't climb on your roof on ice. It took about 2 hours to figure that out, which seems, in retrospect, the only way to do it. And I don't know why I didn't figure it out in 10 minutes. Right. I mean, I was standing there. I mean, I took a broom and I was trying to bang it down and scrape it down. I tried everything. I'm like, I have to get up there. And I take a couple of stamps. And I mean, the roof was an ice sheet and
Right.
a
Oh
sheet of
my
ice. And then
gosh.
so finally, blankets, walked up there, took it down, and the water was gone literally in 5 minutes.
Oh
And then it
man.
actually went through the room, through a heater vent to the basement.
Wow.
And so now what they've done, and so then you call your insurance company, if this is another side note, and they basically said, you can hire any contractor you want. And so back to full circle this, I technically could DIY some of this project, just because the insurance is just going to cut me a check. And what you do with that check is up to you. And this is probably the most important part of this conversation. Careful being a DIY owner, looking at that check, let's say it's 10 grand, doing it yourself. Because if I put this back together wrong and there's any moisture to be found, I'm going to have mold. And that
Oh,
will
that's
come
right.
back to me when I try to sell this home. They will find your mold. If it's in the attic, not so much in the walls, but again, we're not moving for a while. And technology in inspections is getting greater. They're doing infrared.
Well, you
And
just brought up
so,
something I want to ask you. So, if
yeah,
you do a project like that DIY,
yeah.
um, your insurance may still cover it?
So the repair on.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so like, here's what happened. So I called a mediation company. They came out and they had their moisture meters in the walls, or they just measured in the walls, and they cut back a, 2 inches on each side of the French doors going into the office, all the way up about 2 feet, and then on the inside of it, like 5 feet up, 4 feet up, and then again. So the big surround the drywall's all gone. And then they put fans, like 5 different fans all around that surround. And my house sounded like a windstorm for the past 5 days. I mean, we literally had to shut the bedroom door, put pillows up to create a sound barrier. And it was insane. So, and then underneath the house, they put in fans and everything. And that bill's $3,000. Now, yes, I probably could have cut that out rented a machine, measured that, cut it out myself, because it looks super simple how they cut it out. Rented some fans that did it myself. However, if there's moisture, I have now a warranty. And I know it's done professionally. And that's one thing I do not have to worry about. And if it ever came back in my inspection, I'm going right back to that company, which is a very large, reputable company that will stand by the work they did. And so also when you're thinking of DIY, think of if, for me, when I deal with water, plumbing, for example, I wouldn't DIY because things have to be leak proof. And if like a shower door, if that leaks and you don't see the leak, which is how it happens, you don't know it's there. And so 4 years of taking a shower and there's a little drip in the wall because you drilled a hole to put in a nut and then didn't seal it properly, or the bolt.
Right.
Again, those are the things that you have to be super careful, and you have to know your limitations on your own place. And so that's
it's kind of like
a side note.
We watch those shows that do flips, and it's like, but didn't you seal this first, or didn't you put plywood here, or didn't you do this first? It's that concept type thing.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Exactly.
one of the things that I've noticed that contractors also come with, obviously, I would think you would recommend getting a referral or comparing quotes and, interviewing people, or not just going with the first person that you come to on Yelp that you like them.
Right.
But
Right.
don't they also handle permits for you if you need it?
Yeah. So contractors, they have a system that they have to do to, one, keep their license, their insurance, their reputation with the contractors board, not even a Yelp or Google or anything like that. They have a contractors board reputation. And that's where you don't complain. You can complain on Yelp all day long. The contractors board is where you make your complaints to get something remedied. That's where you end up in court. So yeah, when they're doing a major remodel or even these shower doors, there might be a scenario. I most likely not, but Arizona may be different. The shower doors may need a permit.
Right.
And you need to make sure that the work you're getting done, if it needs a permit, you got as a homeowner decide that, yes, it needs a permit for a reason, not it needs a permit, but I don't agree with it.
Right. Right.
And that can be true too. And I'm not in denial that it needs a permit, but I don't agree with it. I've done some things that you probably could have used a permit, but again, all I did was just move something. And so you just have to be careful on those things. I don't want to incriminate myself here.
Yeah, in California, we've noticed that if it's anything external that changes the external construction of the house, that needs a permit.
Okay. Yeah.
We also have something in our county, which was interesting. We put in our pool. Anything that's over $50,000 needs a permit. If it's under 50, they don't say anything.
That's interesting.
I know.
Yeah.
And then if there's something in the planning commission, so our house is a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, plus a den. Well, we converted the den into a walk-in closet, and like expanded the bathroom and stuff. But I wanted an added half bathroom into one of the closets in the living room to the side. And they said that would have had to been permanent, but the other didn't, because it didn't change what was already on the plans the city has for the house.
Yeah.
So I thought that's interesting, just looking at, what requires it and what doesn't.
Yeah.
So moving on to some things that, and again, what we're talking about with the listeners here, we're saying if you're thinking about either remodeling, or if you've got these projects that are just sitting there. We know now into 2023, it looks like the supply chains are getting better. You're able to find materials when it's not like, 500-600% of what it was years ago. But, or I should say, years ago. I mean, I know the pandemic hurt things as well, and things are finally starting to kind of move forward. But Ray, let's say somebody's on a small budget. Let's say they've saved up $5,000 and
Okay.
there's some projects they want to do in their house to really increase or at least maintain the value. And even a new build can lose value fast if you're not careful, right?
Yep.
So let's say one of the things you and I talked about before we got on the episode was the fact that new builders, I don't understand the concept, but they seem to be only painting flat paint, which to me is like just, what is the undercoat called? The of a paint the what is it
Primer.
called? Primer. It
Yeah.
looks like that's all they're doing. And
Yep.
then people are coming back in and saying, why would you do that? You knew when we hired you that we've got 3 kids under 10 and, the fingerprints and we have pets and it's not easy to clean. And I know even with Summer's home and when my one friend Amanda, they basically are like, now we have to go back and repaint with a semi-gloss because we tried to just wash one wall that got some fingerprints on it and it destroys the paint. So
Right.
why is that happening and why, I don't understand that, but go ahead.
Go ahead. So the reason they're doing it is because they're pumping out these homes extremely fast, right?
Um,
And they all have deadlines. And in new construction, getting the home built, well, during COVID, getting the home built, getting that certification of occupation permit done, and getting the buyers loan done, moved in, that's all they care about, start to finish. And flat paint, matte finish, it's ideal for walls that have flaws and blemishes. I mean, that's why they do it.
oh,
Nail pops, it's a covering agent, and it's kind of it's a little secret that they do.
wow. I didn't know
And
that.
so that's kind of the trick. And on another note, if you're going into this home and you get to pick stuff, there might have been a box that says, "Do you want to upgrade another $1,500 for eggshell
Right.
or semi-gloss paint?" And so it's really just a get it done. This covers up everything, and they just spray everything. There's normally not even a different color for the roof or the ceiling, the trim, and the walls. It's just everything,
Yeah.
and
It just seems
it's
so
crazy.
counterproductive.
Well,
But let's say
for
that
you
you're
guys, for the
yeah.
homeowner, but not the builder.
Yeah, not the builder, right. They're like, oh, we're out of here. So let's say you're on a smaller budget, kind of circling back, and let's say
Yep,
you've saved up 15 or let's say
five
$5,000.
grand. Okay.
That's usually where people are like, oh, now I can do a bunch of stuff now. And you're like, well,
Yeah,
wait a second.
yeah.
So let's say that's the case,
Okay.
and you want to, I hate to call it upgrade, but let's say just
Sure.
keep the value or at least maybe because increase the value is very subjective, I think. So,
Yes. Yes.
um, where would you start? Let's say you had projects in paint as one. Maybe you
Yep.
wanted to put in some backyard pavers or fire pits and with some seating, or
Yeah.
maybe your landscaping was either desert landscaping or nothing,
Right.
or you had something inside that you wanted to update. Where is the first part you'd put that kind of budget into a value of your home?
So the first thing I would figure out is one, how long I'm going to be there for. I hear it all the time.
Oh, okay.
I hear it all the time. Oh, we want to do this, but we're going to move. It's like, okay. And then 5 years later, we want to do this, but we're going to move. And so I tell everybody the same thing. It's like, okay, when you're thinking about what you want to do what you want to do to make the home comfortable for you today. Not, will I get my money back if I move? You're going to get the enjoyment of it today. So,
Right.
like, if you've been putting off floors because you're going to move and, oh, I don't know what the new buyers are going to want, you want the floors because it's going to make you happy in the home. And so that's the first step. It's like, what are we doing this for? Are we doing it to sell it? I mean, are we literally going to get this done and then list it? Because if that's the case, flooring and carpet's the number one. It's one of the biggest looking undertake. I mean, obviously the kitchen is, we can get into that in a second. But when people walk into a home, they're like, oh, I don't have to do floors and I don't have to paint the whole home,
Okay.
which is great.
So
And then if
paint
the
too. Okay.
kitchen's, yeah, so paint and carpet, paint and flooring, those are my two number one things. And then if you look at the kitchen and if it's super dated, um, it's just such a bigger project. It just doesn't fit in the budget. So if you were to do that on a lower budget, countertops and appliances, solid surface, newer appliances.
Right.
Again, it shows off very well. The countertops, if they're solid surface, they really take your eyes off the fact that you've got these cabinets that are clearly something. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I look at the whole updating, upgrading is is what you've got. If your carpet's shot, then you got to do that, has to be done. And that's what I would do first, but paint and flooring, and then just kind of move on from there.
Well, it's funny because every time, and of course, I was a big fixer-upper gal. I love watching that show, but I don't like hardwoods. You spill something on it, your hardwoods are ruined. There's any kind of, water
Yeah.
damage at all, it's done. So I prefer I hate calling them vinyl because that reminds me of laminate, but
Yeah.
the engineered floors that are the higher end ones, and I guess right now vinyl is pretty good. They look like a hardwood, but they're
Yes.
actually not.
LVP.
And what's that?
LVP. Just
Yeah,
write
I
that
think
down.
they're
So
great. They look very
luxury
similar.
vinyl plank.
Yeah, they're awesome. That's
Yeah.
what we have in our house, and I think it's really pretty. But the one thing that I noticed is that, especially again, people watching these shows, they seem to think that their taste is everybody else's taste. So, kind of like what you were saying, to me, if you're gonna paint and you're gonna refresh, because paint you can see and you can see, things on walls, you're like, wow, if that's how they let their walls go, how does everything else look? And like you said, flooring and stuff. It's accent walls are probably not a good idea, and you want white bathrooms. But don't you want something that shows a clean slate? So if you're going to sell or if you're going to refresh, you want to start there versus starting to get all decorative. I mean,
Yeah, it's once you figure out what you're going to do. Now, like I said before, if you're not moving, then do whatever you want that you're going to enjoy.
okay,
And that's the number one thing. If you are moving, then yeah, one color, ceiling's white, walls are hopefully a different color or a shade of a different color, because then it does give a little bit of contrast.
like a gray or some kind of
Yeah.
taupe type thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
or
grays
beige.
people are starting to get irritated with grays. I still like them, so I still recommend it. But if I have a seller that's it's like, I do not want to do gray, then we'll come up with something else. If I've got a buyer that walks in our house, they're like, oh, another gray house, I'll be like, oh, what color would you prefer?
Yeah,
And then we just have that conversation, and then you just kind of go from there. But the accent walls, again, those are just for the homeowner.
just for the homeowner.
They're not really for resale,
What
in my
about
opinion.
landscaping, front and back, like fire
Yeah.
pits and all that kind of
Yep.
stuff?
Landscaping, yes, it's really just a cleanup.
Okay.
Is really more important than clean it up, weed, new bark dust. If you're in a desert, new gravel. I mean, it's just really making the place look clean and decluttered, and finally taking that something that's been sitting on your porch for the past 5 months that you just thought your spouse would take care of it and hasn't.
Both of us not making any hints there.
Exactly.
So
And then,
what
yeah,
about what about people who okay, so this I see a lot, and this is, I'm gonna throw my friends under the bus here now. How about people who are in corporate America, or in a non-construction job, non contractor job,
yeah,
and they're like, you know what? I'm tired of sitting at a desk and I'm gonna start doing stuff to my house. And you
right.
had
Yeah.
never done it before. What do you say to those people?
Well, just make sure that you have a contractor friend,
Okay, not
is what I
YouTube.
say. Yeah. Well, I mean, no matter what I say, you're going to start with YouTube. Don't just watch one, of course, watch several. And then even, let's say you're going to take on a big project. You're going to replace a sink, double sinks in your bathroom. My search on YouTube would be double sink replacement fails. So
Oh,
what
that's a
happened?
good tip.
Right. What happened wrong? And
Yeah.
that's what I mean. It's negative, but I search anything that way. If somebody's like, oh, well, I've got a 14-year-old daughter that thinks that every product on Instagram is the greatest product in the world. Just the other day, she's like, I need some greens. Greens, what? It's a new powder that they think is, well, okay. Type in that KSI greens fails or scam. And she's like, oh, yeah, I don't want those anymore. Right. So do that with any DIY project, see what comes up. And most likely, so an example on that project, you're going to find that plumbing out of the wall. If your home is more than 30 years old, which maybe even a little lower, if you're in the 70s, there's a good chance that you've got copper plumbing coming out of the wall. And when you spin that nut to take off the hose, it might just break off.
Ooh, ouch.
And And then you have to solder back on a valve. So, I mean, there's, and if it breaks off and there's no valve, but where's the water? It's not shut off.
Right, where'd it go?
So, I mean, again, that's the fails you're going to see, and it'll be very entertaining. But so that's what I would do. But
not for the homeowner.
No. It'll be very dramatic, and they're going to have somebody very mad. So look up fails, see what the pitfalls are, and then most important, make sure you've got the right tools for the job. They make pipe wrenches, they make certain hammers, they make these tools for a reason. Don't just think you're going to put a crescent wrench on a pipe that needs a pipe wrench. I mean, again, there's tricks of the trade that we don't know, and that's why contractors are so expensive.
Well, you actually brought up a really good point as far as looking at the downfalls or the fails first, because I would think that would help you make your decision whether to get a contractor or not.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at the fails, then you're thinking, okay, how am I going to handle this project? And if you don't have a friend who's a contractor, don't they also usually have a team of people that do other things besides just the project at hand that could come up as well?
Yeah. They're expecting issues within your build.
Okay.
So, and then we can kind of finish on this one. If you have a contractor that you felt really good about and you're wanting to do this on your own, have that conversation going, hey, I want to do this. I want to do the demo. I want to be here when you're doing it. Some contractors will be like, yeah, I don't operate that way. Well, then find one that may let you. And then, I mean, my contractor, again, I became friends and we worked together and I'm helping him sell some homes and things like that. And basically he's like, great, I'll pay you time. I'll pay for your time.
That's
I'm like,
awesome.
Really? So I got like $50 an hour.
That's cool. Just to be kind of a consultant.
I didn't work that long, but I was there and I think he didn't believe me because I think people have said that before and they don't show up to help. But from my perspective, it's a partnership when you're paying somebody to work on your home.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, how many times did you not feel like you were in a partnership with your pool?
Well, and when we remodeled our house, the one thing also, and we'll kind of wrap it up here, is that when you're dealing with a contractor versus walking over with your credit card to Home Depot, remember contractors typically have connections to local suppliers and material vendors. So they get a lot better discounts ordering in bulk, and they might have some stuff in their own garage that they're like, you know what, I over ordered for this project, so I can absolutely deeply discount this for you.
Exactly right.
That can help you in the long run. So hopefully this was helpful to listeners out there, just, understanding if you're on a smaller budget, a bigger budget, what you should start with first, and can you do a DIY project or should you hire a contractor? Thank you, Ray. This has been a great episode, and I hope our listeners will appreciate these homeowner insights now they're looking to tackle home projects in 2023 and looking at their budgets.
Me too.
So that's all for us this week on My Home HQ podcast. Join us next time when we bring in more topics on real estate, home buying, selling, investing, and more. Drop us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. So make it a great rest of your month, and thank you for listening to My Home HQ podcast with Ray Fletcher.
Thank you for listening to My Home HQ podcast with Ray Fletcher. Drop us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out our website and blog at www.rayfletcher.biz or contact Ray directly at realtorrayf@gmail.com to also subscribe to his weekly newsletter.